XZone is Nicky VanValkenburgh. We're going to be talking about her new book entitled Train Your Brain, Transform Your Life, Conquer Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder in 60 Days without Ritalin. Now, do you or someone you care about have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder? It's called ADHD and affects 6 out of every 10 people. The symptoms are restlessness, distraction, disorganization, low arousal, impulsiveness, craving for stimulation, and more. Now, most doctors prescribe ADHD drugs, but there are also brain training for ADHD that is safe, reliable, and effective. Joining me now is Nicky VanValkenburgh. Nicky, welcome to the XZone.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me on the show, and hello to everybody listening.
Tell me, what was your inspiration for writing your book?
I've struggled with ADHD myself, and I took Ritalin for a while. I had a really bad experience with Ritalin, and I started looking for natural solutions, and I stumbled upon brain training. And that's when I decided to write my book. I had a wonderful experience doing brain training myself. I wanted to share and tell people about the technology, how it works.
I understand that a natural cure for ADHD was actually discovered by a medical doctor as far back as 1967. Tell me about this.
It's really exciting because in your show you talk about conspiracies and things like that. Well, there may be a conspiracy when it comes to ADHD. There's a neuroscientist in California. His name's Dr. Barry Sturman. And in 1968, he was a medical professor. He teaches students about the brain, and he's still teaching there today. But in 1968, he was working in his lab with feral cats. Now, these are cats that are born in the wild, and they don't have any human contact. So if you try to pet them, they'll shrink back and they'll run off, and it's really hard to work with them. But he worked with them in his lab, and he developed these sound waves, and he was experimenting with different sound waves, and he trained the cats to remain calm, exercise self-control, and withhold their response, and even have motor stillness with these certain sounds. And these sounds correlated to certain brainwave frequencies. And the cats really responded well to these sounds, and they even ignored the distraction of food and water with these sounds. And he called it the sensory motor rhythm because it worked with the sensory motor part of the brain. He started writing about it in technical journals, and it, you know, people, the Journal of Brain Research and the Journal of Neuropathy. And it was interesting and all, but one day Dr. Sturman was approached by a staff worker who worked in his lab, and her name was Margaret Fairbanks. She said, Dr. Sturman, I have a medical condition, and I can't get my driver's license. I have epilepsy, and because of that, the DMV won't get my license. And it's such a hassle. My husband has to bring me to work. If I go to the store, I have to hitch a ride. And I want my independence. I want my driver's license. Do you think you could test that rhythm on me? And he said, well, you know, I won't make any promises, but yeah, we can see what happens. So they worked every day together, listening to these sounds, and what they were doing was actually practicing the sensory motor rhythm. And it's like they say, practice makes perfect and repetition creates mastery. And by listening to it every day, they were kind of developing these, they were conditioning those sounds to her brain. They were strengthening the sensory motor rhythm in her brain. And by the end of 60 days, he said, okay, let's go back to your doctor and see what he says. So she went back to her doctor, and they did MRIs and all kind of EEGs and tests. And the doctor said, boy, this is amazing. You don't have epilepsy anymore. And it was kind of a landmark decision. She got some notes from the doctor, went to the DMV, got her license that day, and she's been driving ever since.
Fantastic.
It's been really exciting. Yeah, and that's when people from all over the country came to California. They came to Dr. Sturman saying, Dr. Sturman, I've got epilepsy. I want to be your next success story. Can you help me? Can you help my brother? And people were just standing in line outside of his office trying to get this treatment. And then it didn't take long for researchers to say, well, if he can do this with these cats, if he can do this with epileptics, what can he do with attention deficit
All right,
disorder?
stand by. We've got to take our news break here at the bottom of the hour. XZone Nation, we're talking about ADHD this hour. Nicky VanValkenburgh is our special guest. www.trainyourbraintransformyourlife.com. We'll be back on the other side of this news break with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Tell me, I understand that the sensory motor rhythm was also found to boost immunity and was even used in experiments with NASA. Tell us about that.
Right, it's really fascinating. Let me quick wrap up. My last story was that after they had the results with Margaret Fairbanks and the epileptics, researchers said if you can change the brain waves of a person with epilepsy, and if you can change these feral cats, why not change the brain waves of a person with ADHD? And then Dr. Barry Sturman, he worked with these two psychology professors at the University of Tennessee, Joel and Judith Lubar, and they worked for several months to apply the concept of the sensory motor rhythm to attention deficit disorder. And they were able to work with children and actually see significant reduction in ADHD using this protocol. And it became very popular. It became very to teach children to focus, concentrate, be less distracted, to be more resistant to attentional lapses and even hyperactivity. And they reported on this in professional journals and scientific journals, and soon it became kind of a nationwide protocol that the sensory motor rhythm is now used in clinics throughout the country. If you walk in any brain balance clinic, or if you get out your phone book and you look for a neurotherapy clinic, they all know about the sensory motor rhythm, and they could do that protocol with you. But what I have is on my website is I sell a 60-day brain training program that you can do in your own home without ever stepping foot in a clinic. But I'll get to that later to explain the basics of it.
Tell me about NASA.
Okay, Dr. Sturman became interested in the concept of immunity, and this is when NASA approached him about testing a toxic rocket fuel called hydrazine. And in his laboratory, Dr. Sturman investigated whether or not that rocket fuel could cause seizures in cats. And it was just a scientific experiment. The cats that were exposed to the rocket fuel, half of them experienced seizures, but the other half of the cats did not. And it turned out the cats who didn't have seizures were the ones who were exposed to the sensory motor rhythm from the previous experiment. They had a drastic reduction in their seizure thresholds. And that outcome was really surprising and unexpected. So it turned out the sensory motor rhythm strengthened the cat's immune system and enabled them to tolerate the toxic fuel.
You sell a light and sound machine on your website. Is this why when we go to certain areas we hear certain sounds we feel relaxed?
Researchers have found that light and sound can affect your brain waves, and in fact you can stimulate and arouse your brain using light and sound. And that's what I'm offering on my website. I didn't invent the product, I sell it, but it was invented by a school psychologist, Michael Joyce, and his business partner, David Seaver. And David Seaver owns the Mind Alive company in Canada, in Alberta. And they manufacture this light and sound machine.
Okay, so
can I explain quickly how it works, how the light and sound machine works?
Yeah, sure.
Well, it's a system. It comes with 3 parts. It comes with eyeglasses, headphones, and a control box with preloaded sessions. And it's called the Alert. And it's basically a light and sound machine with a specific brain training protocol for ADHD. And it's a brain training device that you can use in your own home. And how it works is that you lay down on your bed, you put on these headphones and the eyeglasses, and then you flip the switch on the control box. And then you just close your eyes, relax, and enjoy. And you'll see a pattern of mild flashing lights, and you'll hear some synchronized heartbeat sounds. And the rhythm that you're seeing and hearing actually stimulates and trains your brain to overcome attention deficit disorder. The sessions last about 22 minutes, and when it's over, you're just ready to go about your day.
Let's get this. When a person decides that they want to try this method, what reactions have you seen yourself?
Oh, really positive. Well, when they use the machine, what you're seeing and hearing is the sensory motor rhythm, and the protocol introduces it to you very gradually, and it kind of trains and conditions your brain. But we've seen just remarkable results. I had a call last week from a military veteran. He was in the Army for a long time, And now he's a civilian, but he still has kind of post-traumatic stress, and he still hears bombs going off, and he's kind of paranoid, and it's hard to get through the day. One of the worst things is going to sleep at night, because a lot of times he wakes up at night, he's sitting straight up in bed, he's drenched in sweat, and he's screaming.
Okay.
The doctor called it night terrors. It can be really scary, but it's very typical of people that have been in the military. Kind of a sign of post-traumatic stress. He bought the machine for me. His wife bought it. He's been using it faithfully every day. After about 30 days, halfway through the program, his night terrors stopped completely. And after 60 days, he noticed that he was retaining that. They didn't come back. And now it's been 3 months since he's using the program, and he hasn't had a night terror since.
Wow.
So we're really excited about that.
Besides ADHD, what other disorders or diseases do you believe that the light and sound system can help?
You know, in Canada, y'all have a really neat thing going on. I live in America. I live in South Carolina. But in Canada, this light and sound machine is part of the Health Canada initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And you can walk into any doctor's office in Canada, tell them you have ADHD, and you're right, it's for other things as well. It's for post-traumatic stress, it's for seasonal affective disorder, it's for depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and all kinds of other problems like that. But you could walk into your doctor's office and tell them that you have these problems, and you can get this light and sound machine covered by your insurance by law. It's really exciting.
Why wouldn't the United States Army and other branches of the military use this for soldiers who have who come back and who have problems, like this other soldier you were telling us about? Why don't they incorporate it into their health system, their healthcare system?
Well, actually, the Mind Alive company that manufactures the machine,
Mm-hmm.
They just got a patent from the U.S. government to use the machine with post-traumatic stress, and they are starting to do that. The company is starting to work with military veterans. I think that it's not really reported on a lot in the media
Mm-hmm.
because there's so much money to be made with drugs. And, you know, of course, the pharmaceutical industry, they can pay for all the TV ads and the nightly news and all that. So I think they're making, kind of setting the agenda for the media as to what's being reported.
Gotcha. So basically, are people with ADHD bored?
They're their brains are sleeping. It's kind of like a sleeping giant. Yes, definitely, we're bored, and
I didn't mean that in a negative way.
Unchallenged is a way you could describe
all right,
it.
Unchallenged, all
But,
right.
Right. The stimulation is what we crave, and that's why so many people drink energy drinks like Monster,
Yeah.
Rockstar, or even coffee, because we're trying to get ourselves up. We're trying to boost that arousal, because subconsciously we know that we're having trouble getting into gear. So we're trying to boost our arousal by drinking this coffee or energy drinks.
Nikki, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the XZone. What would you like to leave the XZone Nation with tonight?
Well, I invite everybody to come out to my website and check out this brain training system. If you want to, you can get a free download of the first chapter of my book, and my website is www.trainyourbraintransformyourlife. You can also order the brain training system there. It's called the Alert 60-Day Brain Training Program for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder.
Nikki, once again, thanks very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and continued success.
Thank you, Rod. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. Once again, XZone Nation, our guest this hour was Nicky VanValkenburgh. She is the author of Train Your Brain, Transform Your Life, Conquer Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder in 60 Days Without Ritalin. So until tomorrow night at 10 o'clock, as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the XZone. From everyone here to all out there, always remember, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night, everyone.